All right, I'm here with Kai McEwen, co-founder of the Three Man Weave. I appreciate you coming on, talking a little Rhode Island basketball, A10 as well. Kind of entering this new chapter for Rhode Island with Archie Miller. I want to start with the big picture, just kind of the perception of the hire. Obviously, excelled at Dayton in the A10. Had some rough patches with Indiana, and here he is at URI. But just kind of the perception of the hire and what you think that means for the program.
Yeah, I think it's an awesome hire. No disrespect to David Cox, but I think it's quite an upgrade from him. You saw Miller have success in the A10 already with Dayton. Obviously didn't really pan out in Indiana, but there's high expectations at that program. Some would say he didn't get a fair shake, with how many years he got to spend there. But I also think he took some time this past year away from coaching and kind of thought about what he wants to do differently going into Rhode Island. So I think it's a great hire. I think it's on par with UMass's hire of Frank Martin, and I think the program's in good shape.
Yeah. And you had mentioned, actually, kind of cut right to that. I was going to talk about Frank Martin and Archie Miller. Obviously it's a
Mhm.
rivalry, URI, UMass, going back to the 90s and the A10. I feel like those two are going to be oftentimes compared, and they should. Two
Mhm.
hires where they universities spent money that fan bases wanted them to spend. They finally did. Similar roster takeovers. Is that a fair shake, you think, to look at those two programs and to kind of compare the two and see where they are in 3 years?
Yeah, I think it is. I think you're starting off relatively at the same point. I mean, Rhode Island's probably been the better program over the last 5 or 6 years, but UMass has that history too, right? They've been at the pinnacle of the sport, and I think Frank Martin's terrific. So I think it's pretty close, actually. I ranked them right next to each other in the A10 in the preseason. I might actually put UMass ahead of them right now, Rhode Island, but they're right next to each other. So I think it is a fair shake. Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely. And, obviously a lot of roster turnover. One of the first, guys I want to talk about, I think Freeman,
Mhm.
obviously is one of the most proven players on the roster. There's not a lot from URI in terms of the transfers. What do you think he means, not just for now, this year, but moving forward? I feel like he is such an important part and kind of can be a star of the, present and future of URI basketball.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Archie, when I talked to him this summer, he said he's as talented as a guard as he's ever coached. So some coach speak there for sure. He's coached some pretty good guards, but Freeman's legit, and I think he's an all-conference caliber type of player. He certainly is used to this league already, and he's still pretty young. So I think he's a lot of upside. Hopefully, he sticks around at Rhode Island with the transfer portal. You never know with these guys, but if he sticks around, great player in the next couple of years.
Yep. And just looking at kind of where you see the roster, we talked earlier, Bilal is hurt. He's not going to start the year. Ant Harris,
Mhm.
huge from North Carolina. He won't be there the
Yeah.
first semester. Don't know when he's going to show up. What do you think can be the calling card for this team? They're very undersized, lost the Mitchell twins. Also Walker to Bryant, which I think is a huge one. We look at it right now. But what you
Mhm.
think the calling card will be for URI?
I think you're going to see Archie go back to his Dayton style versus Indiana. He wants free flowing offense. He wants to play the hybrid forward type of lineups. You're going to see Malik Martin playing the four quite a bit. And I think it's going to be a really athletic, fun team to watch. Brandon Weston is the guy that Archie's been raving about. No one really knows him because he didn't play last season at Seton Hall, but he's a top 100 recruit. And he's been just talking building him up basically this season as a guy that can really impact the program. So I think it could be a fun team. I think it's going to be a defensive team, right? Archie Miller, he's a defensive coach, but I also think it's going to be pretty fun offensively as well.
Definitely. Yeah. No, I'm glad you mentioned Weston. I think, again, another person, like you said, we haven't seen him play collegiately, but a huge
Mm-hmm.
recruit. If you or I were to get him right out of high school, we'd be talking about
Yeah.
him, every single day. Some of the players that have been there, you had mentioned Martin at the four. Obviously, he brings the experience, kind of a steady hand. But, I know you had talked to Archie over the summer, wrote a lot for the A10 in regards to the almanac that just came out. What for you, a player, you look at Jalen Carey, Sebastian Thomas is there. Carey, for me, can put the ball in the bucket. I think they're going to
Mm-hmm.
need buckets. You think he will get a fair shake this year and kind of an opportunity to, show his skill?
Yeah, I do. And it might be off the bench, and that's fine. I think Archie likes him as a leader of the program. He is kind of one of the more experienced guys in the roster. And I think he likes his defense too. We know he can score. Again, he's another guy with a huge pedigree that didn't really work out at Syracuse, but certainly an experienced guard that can bolster what's looking like a pretty good backcourt, depth wise and talent wise.
Yep, for sure. And, moving forward, I don't know if you have thoughts on this, but when you look at Archie Miller coming in and the Rhode Island program, what would you deem? I mean, it's different from fans, but a successful tenure in terms of a three. Let's start with a 3-year tenure. I think it's different than Hurley. Hurley came in, he needed
Yeah.
time. It was different with the transfer portal. The expectations for me, I would say, are a little bit quicker in terms of what should happen. What do you think is a realistic expectation in terms of them being in the NCAA tourney conversation?
I think they can do it in 3 years for sure. Maybe even next year. This season, it could happen. I don't really see it happening with all the roster issues right now, but a top half finish in the A10 this season, certainly within the realm of possibilities. And I might call that a pretty good start for Archie Miller. Next year, 2 years down the road, tournament, at large capability, top 4 finish in the A10. I think it's right there.